Hey everyone and welcome back. Now in today's video we'll be discussing about the basics of databases. So long time back and even in some of the use cases nowadays, many of the work are traditionally done on a paper-based approach. So some of the common examples that we can easily relate would be sending of messages via the postal cards. Then you have ticket booking, then government application form. This is quite common in India where you will have to fill up the application form on paper, and at the end you will have a big chunk of libraries if you go to government office where all you'll see is these papers. In fact, I still remember many years back in the news, what happened was there was a fire in one of the places where lot of such applications form were kept, and at the end lot of data were lost. So when you use the paper-based approach, there are certain disadvantages that one has to go through. So this is one of the reasons why instead of a paper-based approach, the data is now being preferred to be stored in computer systems. So when you discuss about storage of data, one of the term of database is very popular. So a database is an organized collection of data generally stored and accessed electronically from a computer system. So you have a database, and inside the database you have all of the data that is being stored. So the basic concept is instead of storing everything in a paper-based approach, you move digitally. And once you have the data digitally, then you can perform incremental backups for the overall redundancy of your data. Now, when you discuss about databases at a high level overview, there are certain database types that we need to explore for our better understanding. One is a typical flat file. So a flat file database is a database that stores the data in a plain text file. So for example, Excel. So this screenshot can be better understood over here. So this is a simple flat file based approach. The second one is the relational database, and relational database are very popular. So under the relational database, the data is organized into tables which consists of columns and rows that represents a specific entity type. So generally it makes use of SQL, which is a structured query language to manage the databases. So one of the very popular example that you'll see in the market is MySQL. So this screenshot also gives a better understanding where you have a table called as the user info, and now you see you have Mr. A, then you have a number, you have a Mr. B, then you have a number. And this query, which is select star from user info, this is also referred as the SQL query. So depending upon what you want to perform, what operation you want to perform on the database, you can write a specific SQL query. So this SQL query can be for updation, can be for deletion, and so on. The third popular type is also referred as the NoSQL databases. So NoSQL databases stores and manages the data that allow very high speeds and great operational flexibility. So one of the common popular examples are MongoDB, and if you go into the AWS world, it is DynamoDB. So instead of storing the data in form of tables which consist of rows and columns, you store in various other forms like key value pair in NoSQL databases. So let's quickly take an example. The first one that we were discussing was flat file, where you go ahead and have your data over here, and on top of the data you will be able to run various functions depending upon the use cases that you want to achieve. So the second one was the relational database like MySQL. So in here what you do, you perform some SQL query to get a desired result. So let's run a quick command of show databases over here, and now you see you get the list of databases, and the command that we make use are referred as the SQL query. So within this database, there is one database called as KPLabs-DB, and you want to see what exactly the contents are and maybe want to perform some operations. So you can run a command of use KPLabs-DB, and now if you see, it states that the database has changed and we are now inside the KPLabs-DB. So let's quickly look into what are the tables that are available. There is one table of user info, and let's see what is present within this table. So I'll say select star from user info. And within here, you basically get a title number and it has the details of Mr. A and Mr. B, or whatever details that you want to put, the structure can be modified accordingly. And the third type of NoSQL database, let's quickly have a demo on that. So I have a NoSQL database based on DynamoDB. So within the DynamoDB over here, again, you see you have a username and you have a phone number. Now, if you want to create an item, you see that this is more of a key value pair. So let's call Mr. C, and then you can quickly append whatever information that you want to add. So let's give a random number over here, and then you can also have a lot of flexibility in NoSQL database. Anyways, we'll be discussing when the time is relevant. And basically there are multiple ways in which database can be stored in NoSQL. One of the popular one is the key value. Great. So now that we have an overview, let's go ahead and discuss more about installing and managing the databases. Now, depending upon the organization, they can either decide to manage the database on their own servers, or they can also manage the database into the managed database offering like RDS. Now, depending upon whichever approach that you choose, each one comes with its own advantages and own disadvantages. So let's take the first example where you want to manage the database on your own server. So in such cases, what you have to do, first you have to install and provision the database. That is the first step. And then once your database is up and running in production environment, then you also have to take care of the host security, like monthly patching life cycles, the hardening of the system and others. You do not really want your database to be hacked. And once you do that, you also have to take care of various things like configuring replicas, high availability, upgradation, monitoring and others. So this is the first step where you go ahead and create a EC2 instance. You install the database systems like MySQL, and then all of these things you have to take care yourself. Now, I have been working in many of the organizations who either manage the database on their own servers as well as the RDS offering. And from what I have seen, the organization who manages the database on the own servers, they do not take care of a lot of things, due to which there are huge amount of security issues. So let me give you an example. So in the second point, we were discussing that if you're installing the database on the EC2 instance, then you have to take care of the host security like monthly patching, hardening and others. So let's take an example. So if you're familiar with Windows, I hope you know that in Windows you have Windows updates where your Windows system gets updated with lot of updated security patches and all. And if you do not update with the latest patches, then there are chances that your Windows system can be breached. So similarly in Linux, you have to install the latest patches that are available. And many times what happens is after you install patches specifically related to kernel and all, you have to reboot your EC2 instances. Or similarly in Windows, how sometimes you have to restart your computer after you install the patch. And many of the organizations, they are very reluctant to go ahead and reboot the instance, and this leads to a lot of issues. And this is where the managed database offering really comes into a great advantage. So in managed database offering, what you do is you provision the database via a simple GUI steps. So all you have to do is you have to click few buttons and your database is up and running. So in here, the host security, which is patching, hardening and others, is taken completely by the managed provider. So you do not have to worry about it. And various things like replicas, high availability and others can be achieved with a single click. So it is much more easier to achieve it. Now in the earlier demo, we were discussing about how SQL queries can be used to perform certain operations on the MySQL database. So this specific MySQL database is installed on this EC2 instance directly. So if I quickly do a systemctl status MariaDB, you see that our MariaDB is up and running on top of this EC2 instance. So going to the EC2 console, this is the EC2 instance where our database is running. So as we are discussing, since the database is installed on the EC2 instance, all the aspects related to the security of Linux box and various others falls as part of the responsibility of a customer, and if a customer is not paying good attention there, then there can be a chances of a breach as well. Now, as opposed to that, we were discussing about managed database offering like relational database. So here under the relational database console, I have one database called as demo database, and this is completely managed by the AWS in terms of I do not have access to the underlying host. So we cannot perform SSH into the host. All of those things are managed by AWS. All you have a database, and on top of the database you can go ahead and run things accordingly. So that is the one advantage. Second advantage, as we were discussing, lot of things like replicas, high availability, you can do as part of a single click. So if I quickly open up this database here, you see here that lot of things like monitoring. So you have the monitoring of various aspects. You can configure things according to your requirements, and also note that the DynamoDB that we are discussing here, again this is a managed offering. So all you have to do is you have to store your data. Everything else like the security of the underlying host where the database is running is taken care by the AWS. So that's the high level overview about the databases. We looked into various databases types and also into the advantages and disadvantages of either running the database in your own servers or using a managed database offering. So with this, we'll conclude today's video. I hope this video has been informative for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.